understand.
And anybody can ask to see a slide of their choosing at whatever point. What's the difference in cost of involved if we were to pave Waverly Road, but it wasn't heavy haul?
This includes, if it wasn't heavy haul?
If it wasn't heavy haul.
I don't know the answer to that question right now. I would say it's substantially less.
Tim, you got an idea?
20 to 30%.
20 to 30% of the heavy haul cost?
Less or of the total cost?
I'm sorry,
20 to 30% less than this cost, or 20% of the total cost expected? 20 to 30%?
20 to 30% less.
Less, okay.
It's about 1.5 million.
So 1.5.
Yeah. Well, yeah, if we could take a look at B2.
This one particularly concerns me.
Mm-hmm.
I think I made the comment a couple of weeks ago in Chambers that I'm not interested in getting involved with a business development if we cannot make an absolute, make a worst case scenario, make the best assumptions that we're not going to come out on the bad end of this after 10 years. This particular scenario does just that.
Okay. Can we see B3?
I have a question as a kind of an overall question. Do we have an estimate, and I'm not sure who, to gear towards what one rooftop impact is? I'm just trying, when you look commercial versus the talk is we always have to have commercial. So adding a rooftop, a 10-year revenue stream, I mean, how much do we look at with one rooftop, which is what we've had the most of over the last 10 to 15 years?
We do have it now.
Yep.
We do.
Well, net loss is a net loss, Keith, regardless
Well, no,
of the
well-
rooftops or warehouses.
I would assume you're not the only one in the room that saw that red number and said that's probably not the game we want to play.
No.
We can
So
fight that.
I think that's pretty safe to say.
Mm-hmm.
Over 10 years,
Over 10 years.
just short of $5,800 for the average home value of $160,000, which is what we always use,
Mhm.
and there's no abatements or anything on a home, so
Right.
$160,000. Assessment rate's 11.5%. 1 year, city, that's just the city
Right.
property tax, $577 times 10, just sort of $5,800.
So as we look at, best case scenario here is B3, that's a lot of math to figure out, but that's a lot of rooftops that come through one development. So it's one of the important things that we have to factor in is how long it tries to gain that same revenue.
Well, I've always been told that rooftops are a losing proposition, so why would
They
you
are.
want to?
They are.
Why would you want to put it in those terms? I mean, if it doesn't, more rooftops means more losses, according to what I've always heard.
Yeah, I think that's probably safe to say, but I think the overwhelming comparison that we hear about is we need to bring in more commercial development, and that plainly describes why that's necessary.
Well-
And you relate the values to one another.
But this commercial development doesn't do other things that homeowners do, which is
I don't think
spend money.
that's not a surprise anymore. You can pull in all those factors. I'm just trying to relate one single lot. You're right. They won't go to the park. They won't buy a pool pass. They won't
Spend money.
Well,
price
they'll
shoppers.
spend money. They'll have individuals that will spend money here and move here. So if you want to look at all the tree limb costs, then we've got 6 years worth of analysis to go into it. I'm just trying to break it down to a simple piece that's easy to understand of here's what it brings in, here's what this brings in.
Well,
So-
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think the marginal value of an industrial or commercial development over a residential development is not in dispute, because the cost of services to be provided to that property are far outweighed by the revenues that are being generated by tax and other fees and utilities. For example, this kind of development is going to use a heck of a lot more water than a typical household. It's going to use a lot more electricity than a typical household.
do a lot more wear and tear on the roads.
No, but that's understood, and I don't think that we also included the wear and tear on 183rd Street as part of the cost portion of this analysis. And that, to me, is still something that I don't find acceptable within their proposal as it currently stands. I think we need to do something about that. If that means accelerating the development of Waverly Road and having the developer pick up a portion of that cost to accelerate that paving, that's fine, but I am not willing to put heavy haul truck traffic right through the heart of a residential neighborhood. I'm not gonna budge on that. Going back to what he said, absolutely, commercial and industrial development does pay for itself on balance if you structure it right.
Absolutely.
And that's the question. The real question here is whether or not Zimmer's initial proposal is an ultimatum or a starting point. I would tend to agree it's a starting point, and we need to work back from those numbers and move towards more of what we expect with a Gardner abatement policy, which is 50%. But that's just me. I think the 50% threshold is a much better threshold from the standpoint of city revenues, and we do need to have to factor in the wear and tear on 183rd. And again, I don't think we're moving anywhere without addressing that concern.
Christie?
Yeah, so when I break this down, basically, and I'm talking about scenario B3, it's about $127,000 a year, roughly, in revenue. What does that, and that's not just property tax, so we can't really equate that to mill reduction. So, I mean, I guess when you take that into consideration, this is not, just to be clear, I mean, this is not going to be a reduction in mill in this 10-year period, right? So, if we're looking at this to offset the burden on residential property, I mean, that is not going to happen. The other way to look at this, though, is, I mean, this property, we're not getting anything from this property today at all. And that's not to say that we should jump in here. I'm just saying that today we're getting zero. So, I mean...
It's zero cost, too.
At zero cost as well. No, I agree with you.
One of the things that I'm going to have to question on is the requirement of building Waverly as a heavy haul road. I can appreciate that it expands the target area of the developers, and they want to have as wide a focus as possible. But Edgerton's already gone to considerable expense, shared in half, I believe, by BNSF to pave 191st Street to get them into the intermodal facility and the logistics park there, which is already set up to handle the heavy haul.
Well,
I can't imagine whether it's us or Waverly, or Edgerton, that either of the municipalities are excited about building a heavy haul road on speculation that the people that locate there might need a heavy haul road.
yeah, I guess, and that's another question. I mean, do we, as a council, say the developer agreed to pay for all of that? Do we agree that Waverly should be a heavy haul road? I mean, that's a fundamental question. So, I mean...
I'm not in favor of paving a
No,
road.
what if we don't pay for it, though? I mean, I'm saying if the developer came in and said, we'll pay the $4.8 million to make that heavy haul, as a council, would we say, okay, it's okay for Waverly to be heavy haul at that point?
I would imagine.
I don't know, is that realistic, though? I mean, what's the total
Well,
value?
well,
What's the total
the-
value of the property right now?
Well, the other concern, Larry, that
Yeah,
you
yeah,
got to
yeah.
have is that along Waverly Road, I don't think you're going to see residential. I mean, looking at the map, I don't think it goes anywhere. That area, at least for the parcels immediately to the east and west of that, are going to be anything other than industrial.
Well,
I don't think anything's going to go west of Poplar.
They can be whatever we say they can be. I mean, our future land use map shows them as low-density residential, right?
Correct, but that was
So-
before the intermodal stuff.
Well, that's true, but I mean, the whole point of planning and the whole point of a comprehensive plan is to decide what we want there, not, here's a bad deal, and do you want, which gradation of bad deal do you want? That's how I see it.
But don't you think, I mean, Larry, I guess what Steve's saying, we have no control over this property
They can,
at all.
that's true, they can develop it